He once raised a lion as a friend, taught it to trust the hand of man. But years later, when that same lion returns as a killer, the man who created it must confront the wild he thought he understood. In the heart of Africa, under the roaring sky, one man's search for redemption will test the limits of love, guilt, and forgiveness between man and beast. The morning light crept through the blinds, falling across stacks of yellowed photographs scattered on the table. Elias Kane sat in silence, his hands trembling as he picked up one, the image of a younger man laughing under the African sun, an arm wrapped around the golden mane of a lion cub. Both looked fearless then, untouched by time or tragedy. The phone rang again. He hesitated, staring at the screen as if it were a ghost. When he finally answered, a voice from a life he had buried spoke his name. "Elias, it's Jonas. You need to come back." The old trainer closed his eyes. The name, the place, it all came rushing back like a flood. Kambara, the reserve he swore never to see again. The voice on the line cracked. "It's Aslan. We think it's him. He's killing people, Elias." A long silence followed. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady, like the rhythm of an old regret. Elias could hear it even over the line. The weight of those words settled deep in his chest. Aslan, the lion he had raised, loved, and lost, the lion whose name he hadn't spoken in over a decade. "Jonas," he finally whispered, "you can't be sure it's him." "We are. The scars match. The way he moves, it's him. The villagers want him dead. If anyone can reach him, it's you." Elias said nothing. The photograph slipped from his fingers and landed face down on the floor. His reflection in the window looked like a stranger, a man haunted by something that never stopped breathing inside him. That night he packed a single suitcase. His hands paused on a small leather collar, worn and frayed, with a name tag that read Aslan. He slipped it into his coat pocket. Outside, the rain had turned to wind. As Elias locked the door behind him, he whispered, almost to himself, "I taught you to trust me, boy. God help me if I have to break that now." He walked into the darkness toward a past that had never truly let him go. The air in Nairobi was thick with dust and jet fuel, carrying the smell of a continent Elias once called home. 12 years had passed, yet the heat felt exactly the same, dry, honest, and merciless. As he stepped off the small bush plain, the horizon stretched endlessly, a band of gold and red where the sun melted into the grasslands. Jonas was waiting by an old Land Cruiser, his face older, heavier. When their eyes met, words failed them. The drive to Kambara was long and quiet. Herds of antelope moved like waves through the savanna, and vultures circled in the distance. "You shouldn't have come back," Jonas muttered finally. "They still remember the accident. Some blame you more than they blame the lion." "I'm not here for forgiveness," Elias said. "I just need to see him." As they passed through the reserve gates, the truck slowed near the electrified fence. A group of villagers stood beyond it, holding torches and machetes, their anger raw and fearful. A child's body had been found near the river last night. Rumors spread faster than truth in this land, and now the name Aslan carried the taste of blood. At the ranger station, Elias met Mara, the young warden now in charge. Her uniform was worn, her stare sharper than the rifle slung across her shoulder. "You trained him," she said coldly. "You made him think humans were safe. You made him forget what he was." Elias didn't answer. He walked to the observation deck overlooking the grassland. The wind carried the low rumble of thunder from the east, and something else, deep and distant, like a roar hidden beneath the storm. "He's still out there," Jonas said quietly. Elias kept his eyes on the darkening horizon. He always was. Lightning flashed, revealing a silhouette in the distance, massive, solitary, watching. For a heartbeat, Elias could swear the lion was looking straight at him. Then the sky went dark again, leaving only the wind and the memory of a sound that once meant home. Night fell heavy over Kambara, the kind of darkness that swallowed sound. The wind whispered through the thorn trees, carrying the scent of rain and something older, wild, alive, familiar. Elias sat outside the ranger outpost, a lantern burning low beside him. He couldn't sleep. Each gust of wind brought back the same echo from his past, the low, rolling growl of a lion calling across the plains. From inside, Mara's voice broke the silence. If he's out there, he's watching. They always watch before they strike. Elias didn't turn. He's not hunting, he said softly. Not yet. A distant roar rose through the night, deep, resonant, commanding. The guards froze, exchanging wary looks. Even the crickets fell silent. Elias stood, lantern in hand, and walked toward the fence line. Beyond the dim floodlights, the grass shimmered under the moon, silver and endless. Then 2 golden eyes appeared. They floated in the dark, steady and knowing. Elias's breath caught. Time folded back on itself. He was once again the young man in the photo, laughing beside a lion cub who trusted him completely. He took a slow step forward. "Aslan," he whispered. The eyes blinked once, then a low rumble answered him. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. Elias felt it in his bones. But as quickly as they appeared, the eyes vanished into the night. Mara came running up behind him, rifle in hand. "You saw him?" Elias nodded, unable to speak. The adrenaline, the memory, the ache, all collided inside him. "He remembers you," she said, half disbelief, half fear. Elias stared into the darkness. "That's what scares me." The roar came again, farther away this time, rolling over the plains like thunder. It left behind an eerie stillness, the kind that feels like the world itself is holding its breath. Elias turned back toward the outpost, whispering to the night as if Aslan could still hear him. "You waited for me. I just hope I'm not too late." Morning broke gray and heavy. The smell of rain lingered as Elias walked the edge of the reserve, following the same trails he once knew by heart. Every rustle in the grass made his pulse quicken. He was chasing ghosts, memories buried beneath years of guilt. Inside the small ranger cabin, Mara stood over a pile of old reports. "I read your file," she said quietly. "The accident. They said it was your fault." Elias didn't answer. He stared at a photo on the wall, an old training arena surrounded by bright tents and smiling crowds. "They were right," he said finally. "I wanted to prove he could be more than a beast. I pushed him too far." He remembered that day as if it were happening now. The blinding sun, the smell of dust and sweat, Aslan pacing inside the ring. The crowd clapped when Elias stepped forward, calm and proud. He had raised the lion from a cub, trusted him like a son. But the noise, the flashes, the pressure, it was too much. Aslan roared, startled by the explosion of a firecracker. The panic that followed lasted only seconds, but those seconds destroyed everything. A man died that day. The show collapsed, and Aslan was taken away. Elias never saw him again, until now. "I thought I could fix him," Elias said, his voice breaking. "But I was really trying to fix myself." Mara looked at him, not with anger now, but understanding. "Maybe it's not about fixing anything," she said. "Maybe it's about letting go." He walked outside, the wind tugging at his coat. In the distance, he saw vultures circling, something dead or dying out there. He raised his binoculars, half expecting to see a carcass. Instead, he saw a single lion print in the mud, massive and fresh. "Aslan," he murmured. The past had come full circle, and this time there would be no running from it. The scars he carried were not just his own. They were written across the savanna itself. By dusk, the savanna burned in shades of copper and smoke. News had spread through the villages. Another attack near the river, a child taken in the night. The air was thick with grief and rage. Elias stood among the gathered crowd as the village elder raised his hand. "No more waiting," he said. "The lion dies tonight." Torches flared to life. Men shouted, loading rifles and spears onto trucks. Mara argued with them, her voice trembling with frustration. "Killing him won't bring the boy back." But anger had drowned reason. Elias stepped forward, weary but firm. "Give me one night," he said. "If he's still out there by dawn, you can do what you must, but let me try to reach him first." The crowd murmured. Jonas placed a hand on the elder's shoulder, pleading silently. Finally, the old man nodded. "One night, no more." As the villagers dispersed, Mara glared at Elias. "You think you can call him like before? He's not your pet anymore. He's a killer." Elias looked out toward the river's edge, where the reeds swayed in the evening wind. "He's not a killer," he said. "He's what we made him." Later, as they prepared to track the lion, Jonas handed Elias a worn hunting rifle. Elias refused it. "If I bring a gun," he said quietly, "he'll see only fear." They set out under the moonlight, moving carefully through the tall grass. The night was alive with sounds, the croak of frogs, the hum of insects, the heartbeat of the wild. Yet beneath it all was silence, too deep to ignore. Then Mara froze, pointing ahead. A shape moved in the dark, large and silent. Elias lifted his lantern. What they found instead made his stomach turn. Jonas's body lay half hidden in the reeds, blood dried at his temple. But the wounds, clean, deliberate, were not from claws or teeth. Beside him lay spent rifle shells. Mara's voice shook. This wasn't a lion. Elias stared into the darkness, fury rising beneath the grief. Someone wanted Aslan blamed. Someone wanted him dead. He clenched his fists and whispered to the night, "Not this time." The sun fell behind the acacia trees as Elias and Mara followed the trail toward the old quarry, a place long abandoned and avoided even by the rangers. The tracks were clear, boot prints, not paw marks, leading straight into the ravine. Elias crouched low, touching the dirt. "They've been here recently," he whispered, "and they're hunting." Mara frowned. "Who?" He looked up at her, his eyes hard. "Men, not lions." Before she could answer, a gunshot cracked through the air. The bullet struck the ground inches from her feet. They dove behind a fallen log as more shots echoed. Dust rose like smoke. Voices shouted in the distance, rough and confident. Elias peeked over the ridge and saw them, 3 men with rifles, moving with practiced ease. At their center stood Roth, tall, cold-eyed, the kind of man who didn't flinch at death. Elias recognized him instantly. Years ago, Roth had supplied animals for circuses and private hunts. He was there the day the firecracker exploded, the day Elias lost everything. Roth's voice carried across the rocks. "Still chasing your pet, Kane? Thought you learned your lesson when it killed a man." Elias gritted his teeth. "You caused that explosion," he shouted back. "You turned him into this." Roth laughed. "That lion's worth more dead than alive now. Step aside." Mara tried to signal for backup on the radio, but static filled the air. The line was dead. The hunters were. Closing in then, from the shadows behind them, came a sound that froze every living thing, a deep rising growl that shook the earth. Out of the tall grass emerged Aslan, his mane catching the last flicker of twilight. His eyes locked onto Roth, then flicked to Elias. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Then Roth fired. The shot rang out, but Aslan was already moving, a blur of muscle and fury. He hit Roth like thunder, sending him sprawling. Chaos erupted. The other hunters fled, firing blindly into the night. Mara screamed for Elias to get down, but he didn't move. When the dust settled, Roth lay motionless. Aslan stood over him, chest heaving, blood glistening on his fur. He turned his gaze toward Elias, not with rage, but with something older, deeper, almost human. Elias took one hesitant step forward. "Easy, boy," he whispered. "It's over now." The lion swayed, his breath heavy. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of iron and rain. Then, with a soft rumble that sounded almost like a sigh, Aslan collapsed at Elias's feet. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy enough to wash the blood into the red earth. Elias knelt beside Aslan, his hands trembling as he pressed against the lion's side. The rise and fall of that great chest was shallow, uneven. Each breath sounded like it carried the weight of the whole savanna. Mara crouched nearby, clutching her wounded arm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He saved you, Elias. He saved us." Elias couldn't speak. His throat felt locked. He stared into Aslan's eyes, those same golden eyes he had once looked into when the lion was just a cub curled in his lap. The years between them melted away. There was no fear now, no blame, only recognition. He brushed his hand along the lion's mane, still warm beneath the rain. "You were never the monster they said you were," he murmured. "You just needed someone to see you again." Aslan let out a low rumble, a sound closer to a purr than a growl. Then, slowly, he tried to lift his head, his gaze turning toward the open plains beyond the ravine. The storm raged around them, but in that moment the world seemed to pause. Elias whispered, "Rest, old friend, you've done enough." The lion's eyes flickered one last time. Then, from deep within his chest, a roar began, soft, rising, rolling out across the land. It echoed through the thunder, carried by the wind, until it became something greater than sound itself. From far off, other roars answered, lions across the plains, calling back in mournful harmony. Mara looked up, tears mingling with the rain. "They're answering him." Elias bowed his head. "They're saying goodbye." Aslan's body went still, his final breath slipping away into the storm. The rain washed his fur clean, turning gold beneath each flash of lightning. For a long time, neither of them moved. Elias finally rose, his legs unsteady, his face streaked with mud and rain. The roar still echoed faintly through the night, fading like a prayer. He looked toward the horizon and whispered, "You kept your promise, Aslan. Now I'll keep mine." Morning came quiet and clean. The storm had passed, leaving the land washed in gold. Mist rose from the plains, and the air smelled of wet grass and ash. Elias stood beside the shallow grave under an old acacia tree, the same place where he had first trained Aslan as a cub. The soil was still dark, fresh, and soft beneath his boots. He placed the worn leather collar atop the mound of earth. The nameplate, Aslan, caught the light for a moment before the wind turned it face down. Mara stood behind him, her arm in a sling, silent and respectful. She set down a small wooden marker they had carved the night before. The words burned into it read, "He was never a beast, he was loved, and he loved back." For a long while, neither of them spoke. The savanna stretched endlessly before them, peaceful now, almost forgiving. Elias finally broke the silence. "I used to think love could tame anything," he said. "But maybe love's not about control. Maybe it's about setting something free and hoping it remembers the way home." Mara gave a faint smile. He remembered. Elias nodded, his eyes glistening. So did I. As they walked back toward the truck, a sudden movement caught his eye. In the distance, near the tree line, a small shape moved through the tall grass, graceful, cautious. It was a young lion, its coat still pale and spotted, curious eyes watching from afar. It sniffed the air, then stepped toward the grave, lowering its head as if in quiet recognition. Elias froze, the breath leaving his chest. "You see that?" he whispered. Mara followed his gaze. "A cub?" "Maybe not just any cub," Elias said softly. "Maybe a piece of him." The young lion lingered a moment longer, then disappeared back into the golden grass, swallowed by the light. Elias stood there, tears mixing with a smile that carried both sorrow and peace. When they reached the edge of the reserve, he looked back one last time. "Goodbye, my friend," he murmured. "This time, I'll stay and do it right." The wind rose gently through the trees, carrying the echo of a distant roar, soft, steady, eternal. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Before you scroll away, tell me this. Do you believe a bond like theirs could really exist? If this story touched your heart, drop a 1 in the comments so I know you're still with me. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just remind you that sometimes the wild loves us back in ways we'll never forget.